Hi, Lori Micah here. The first time I heard this near death experience, I cried. But Jeff Olson's NDE also confirmed two long held beliefs that I have. Number one, that nobody dies before their time, that people actually do pick exit points, points in time when they leave their human incarnation to return to the other side. And number two, when Jeff's wife implored him to return, saying to him, "You promised to go back. You agreed to return." I knew for sure that soul contracts were real. So I'm bringing this one back from the archives. Did this well over a year and a half ago. It's reached millions of people, and I would like it to have a chance to reach a larger audience on my channel. So go grab your Kleenex. This is going to be a good one.
There was all the broken glass and the smell of gasoline, and I was losing consciousness. It was in that moment that I felt light come. Light came. And it felt like I was being lifted or rose above the accident scene. And what took her life was head trauma. And I knew that at the accident. And I only bring that up because suddenly in this light, here she comes and she's gorgeous. She's magnificent. She's beautiful. There's no injuries. There's no trauma. She's absolutely brilliant. And we begin to converse, and she's emphatic. She's like, "Jeff, you can't stay. You got to go. You got to go back. You can't be here." And she was actually emotional about it. She kept saying, "You've got to go back. You've got to go. If you stay here, Spencer, our 7-year-old, will be orphaned." And we made an agreement.
Do you believe that love never dies and you want to hear stories that prove it? Well, hit the subscribe button. You belong here. Jeffrey Olsen has one of the bravest near death experience stories that I have ever heard. And his story has touched over 4 million people in the views around the world. And I think that one of the reasons his story resonates so deeply with people is because it gives comfort, especially to parents who have lost a child, but then to everybody else as well. And although he's told his story a lot, today we're going to dive in deep and hopefully I'm going to ask him at least one question that he's never been asked before. So, Jeff, welcome. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, Lori, it's an honor. It's an honor to be with you, and I am open to questions, whatever you want to ask. So that
Yay. Well, I'm really excited. I know this is going to be a great conversation for us, and hopefully you'll be able to impart some information to people that they can use and adopt in their own life today.
awesome. Awesome. Awesome.
Well, why don't we start with a little bit about what your life was like before this happened?
Oh, wow. Briefly, I grew up on a little family farm with a dad and three brothers. I mean, it was something like the old Bonanza. Small town, ended up playing football, Division I football, got a football scholarship, went away to college, fell madly head over heels in love, got married. About 3 years into the marriage, began to have children, had our first son. And then there was complications getting number two here. But 6 years after the fact, the second son was born. And so it was me, my wife, and two boys. I had gotten a degree in what they called advertising design with a minor in psychology and marketing. So I was an ad guy working in agency life and doing all of that. I was very driven. It was a go fight, win, get the grade, get the girl, get the car, get the house type of a thing. I was probably always kind, compassionate, but I also was so competitive. It was about beating the other person, it was about winning. And that had worked really well up until the time of my near death experience. I mean, gosh, I was running a successful agency. My wife, Tamara, was teaching high school, which she loved. Our boys were healthy and thriving. And it felt as if everything we had set out to do had manifested magnificently. And then that was leading right up into when it all changed.
Okay. Why don't you share in any way that you feel moved to what happened with your near death experience?
Yeah, my near-death experience was the result of an automobile accident, and it was a family road trip. We had loaded everybody in the car. We lived in northern Utah. We had headed down to southern Utah, all the beautiful red rocks and the scenery down there. We also had family down there. My wife's parents and grandparents lived in that area. And it was Easter weekend. So we'd gone down and spent the weekend and celebrated Easter and had a beautiful time. And it was on the return home from that. It was a Monday morning, mid morning. I was going to miss a day of work. We had taken an extended holiday. And it was interesting because we said our goodbyes. I had buckled the kids in their car seats. We had loaded everything up in the car, and we were just pulling away from the curb. And there was Grandma and Grandpa on the porch waving the way they do. And as I began to pull away, Tamara said, "Stop, wait." I thought she had forgotten something. So I stopped the car. And she said, "I just want to go say goodbye to Mom and Dad one more time." Now, in that moment, I thought, women, gosh, we're ready to go. I mean, what? We already hugged. But I watched and I noticed, and this is powerful in hindsight. In the moment, I wouldn't have had this insight. It's in hindsight that this became so powerful. But I watched as she ran up and not only hugged Mom and Dad, but she kissed both her mother and father. And I noticed that. And then she ran back and jumped in the car. And I put the car in drive. I headed for the interstate. She buckled up, and I put the cruise control on 75 miles per hour, which is as fast as I could legally go. And away we went. The hindsight part of this is based on what would unfold that day. That was the last goodbye. And she heard that whisper, "Stop, wait," this urgency. And it's taught me to listen for that whisper in your life and what you might be directed to do in any given moment. But as we headed up the interstate, and I'm driving, and there was other profound things leading up to the experience, I was just peeking at traffic, driving away, thinking about all the things I had to do, and I was going to miss a day of work, and it was a travel day. And I glanced in the rearview mirror just to see what traffic was behind me, if there was any. And as I did that, I caught a glimpse of my youngest son, Griffin, in his car seat, and he had fallen sound asleep. And I'm talking about a moment. I mean, this is a glance. It wasn't, but in that moment, I thought, what a miracle. When our first son was born, Spencer, we were told we may not have more children. There was complications. There was things that had gone on, and yet here he was. And in that glance, in that moment, I thought, wow, there's a miracle. We didn't know if we'd have more children, and there he is, sound asleep. What a beautiful kid. And I noticed details, like I noticed how long his eyelashes were. In this glance, it's like, wow, look at his eyelashes. And then I heard Spencer, my oldest son, playing with action figures in the seat behind me and just making all the joyful noise of a little boy. And then I glanced over at Tamara, and she had also reclined her seat and was sound asleep, but she was still holding on to my hand. And in that moment, I thought, wow, we're 10 years into a marriage and 2 kids, and we're pursuing our careers, and she's still holding on to my hand. It was this profound moment of gratitude, like, wow, look at the beauty I'm surrounded in. And of course, my attention went back to the road, and I was driving, and it was probably an hour after that it all came undone. And there was reports of heavy crosswinds. There was reports of a red pickup truck driving erratically on the interstate. One of the most difficult parts of the story, which I struggled with and sometimes still do, is I believe I may have dozed off. I might have just nodded off briefly at the wheel. And I don't know if you've ever done that. There's no,
I would think that everybody listening has done that.
well, yeah, and there's no excuse for that. I mean, but it leads me to the pressures, the responsibilities of a young father. I was 33 years old I was running my own business. I was doing those 16, 17-hour days. And I may have just briefly nodded off, but whatever happened is I swerved to the right. I overcorrected to the left. I lost control of the vehicle and it began to roll, not off the road, but down the hard concrete at 75 miles an hour. It was a horrible accident. The accident reports say it probably rolled no less than 6 or 8 times. I blacked out as the car rolled. I realized, wow, we're crashing. But it wasn't until the car came to a complete stop that I was fully conscious. It's like, oh my gosh. And the first thing I heard was Spencer, my 7-year-old, my oldest son. He was crying hysterically in the back seat. And my thought as a father is I've got to get to my boy. I've got to get to my son. And that's when I realized I couldn't move. I was pinned, perhaps. I couldn't tell if it was to the seat or the floorboard. I was somewhat disoriented. What had actually happened is both of my legs had been crushed and broken up. The left leg was eventually amputated above the knee. My back had been damaged. A couple vertebrae were cracked. It didn't damage the spinal column, thank goodness. My right arm had nearly been torn off. My rib cage was damaged. My lungs were collapsing. And then the seatbelt had cut through and ruptured all my insides. I was not in great shape. But I was unaware of any of that. I knew I was in pain. I knew I was struggling to breathe. I knew I was holding on to consciousness, but my son was crying. I wanted to get to my son, and that's when I realized that no one else was crying. I became aware in that moment. I knew that both Tamara and my youngest son, Griffin, were gone. My wife and youngest child were killed instantly in the accident. And that's the worst hell a man can be in. The regret, the panic, I kept thinking, gosh, I want those 3 seconds back. I've got to get those 3 seconds back. But I knew at the scene that half the family was gone, that I had a hysterical child I couldn't get to, which he sounded okay. And I was losing consciousness. And it was a pretty dark place. Now, I don't share that to be graphic or morbid. It's just the contrast. It was in that moment that I felt light come. Light came. It's like it came to me. Light surrounded me. It felt as if this light was comforting me in this absolute horrific hell of a moment. And it felt like I was being lifted or rose above the accident scene. And suddenly I could breathe. And suddenly there was no pain. I even had the thought, how can I be okay? What's happening? And then Tamara, my wife, who I knew was deceased at the accident, suddenly she was there in the light with me. I don't often share this detail, but I feel compelled to. Because Tamara had reclined her seat back, the seat belt did not restrain her properly. And what took her life was head trauma. And I knew that at the accident. And I only bring that up because suddenly in this light, here she comes and she's gorgeous. She's magnificent. She's beautiful. There's no injuries. There's no trauma. She's absolutely brilliant. And we begin to converse and she's emphatic. She's like, Jeff, you can't stay. You got to go. You got to go back. You can't be here. And she was actually emotional about it. And we had a conversation. I mean, it was somehow she knew she couldn't come back, but I could. She kept saying, you've got to go back. You've got to go. If you stay here, Spencer, our 7-year-old, will be orphaned. And we made an agreement. I agreed to come back, that I would come back and raise our son. And that was probably the most profound goodbye I'll ever say. And it was interesting. I didn't have to figure out how to come back. It was the intention. It was the thought, okay, I'm going back. And as I made that conscious decision, I found myself moving about a hospital, a busy ER, emergency room, level 1 trauma center. Now, I have no concept of time in this bubble of light. I later found out people arrived at the scene. The emergency services were called. I had to be extricated from the car. I was life flighted or airlifted to the nearest level 1 trauma center. Spencer, my son, was banged up pretty good, but he was okay. I was unaware of any of that. I knew I'd wrecked the car. I knew I'd said the most profound goodbye I'll ever say. And there I was moving about this hospital, seeing the doctors, the patients, the families of the patients, the nurses. I was acutely aware. It's like I had 360-degree awareness of everything and everyone. And the interesting thing is, everyone I encountered, everyone I saw, everyone I was aware of, I knew them perfectly. And it wasn't that they were strangers in this realm, but I knew their soul. I felt their life. I call it a oneness. I was connected to them. They were connected to me. Brief example, nurse walks by, seems completely unaware of me. And in an instant, I feel her life. I felt the abuse that she had endured as a child. And yet in that same moment, it's like, wow, but look at her. She's here. She's healing, helping, working this hospital. It was everyone I saw. I knew everything about them. There was no judgment. There was absolute love. And I saw their magnificence. I'm like, what a magnificent soul. I felt that I was seeing them as God sees us. It was a higher realm. It was, I had grown up in a conservative Christian home. The biblical verse came to me that inasmuch as you've done it unto the least of one of these, you've done it unto me. It was something Jesus said, but I saw that at a whole new level. I thought, wow, they are me. No wonder when Jesus was asked, well, when did we do that? I was the man in prison. I was the beggar on the street. I was the stranger who simply wanted acceptance. And there was this whole new level of perhaps what that biblical verse means is it's not about religion, but based on my history and my upbringing and my conditioning, I thought, wow, okay, now I get it. I thought that was a nice verse about being nice. Now I'm seeing that we literally are one. We literally are intertwined. And I was experiencing that connection until I came upon a body, a man laying on the gurney that I didn't feel that from, which I thought was odd. And that's when I stepped closer and looked and realized, oh my gosh, that's me. But it wasn't me. I was having this profound connected experience, but there was my body. There was my skin suit, if you will. And there was this intense sadness looking at the body. Maybe not sadness, maybe an acute awareness again. It's like, wow, I took it for granted. I never had to remind my heart to beat. I didn't have to think about my lungs breathing. I didn't have to teach my eyes how to see and my ears how to hear. I was looking at the body and realizing what a miraculous machine gift the body was, and mine was so broken, so intensely broken, and I knew I had to get back in it. I knew I had made the agreement to get back in. And again, our intentions, the thought, I'm going back in. Boom, then I'm back in the body, but back to the pain, the grief, the regret, the guilt, the trauma, it was so heavy, so big. I was ventilated. There was a big tube down my throat doing the breathing from my lungs. My legs were obviously immobile. My right arm was immobile. They eventually tied down my left hand because I kept grabbing at all the medical equipment. But I was there to waller in it. And I was in the hospital for almost 6 months. I had 18 surgeries in total. I was in ICU for months. I mean, it was horrible. I had massive infections. I was throwing pulmonary emboli, the blood clots that lodge in your lungs. But I learned a lot. Being still, laying there, being with it, experiencing the doctors, the nurses, family members, feeling at a whole new level. I think maybe the most profound experience happened to me at the end of my hospital stay. And it's probably worth pointing out. I mean, the most profound experiences were at the scene of the accident, before all the morphine and narcotics were administered, and then at the end of my hospital stay, when I was off of the narcotics and simply on Tylenol. This was just This is a week or two before I was to go home. But I still was grieving so miserably, even with this profound out of body or near death experience. I was grieving so miserably the loss. And Griffin, my little son, what had happened in the accident is the car seat had broken up and he had been ejected from the car. And I knew that at the scene. And even then it was like, where's my little boy? And I knew. And so I had grieved him miserably. I had grieved them both, but there was just so much trauma around that. And at the end of my hospital stay, I was out of ICU. I was out of surgical recovery. I was actually out of a hospital room and in the rehabilitation wing. I was still in a hospital bed and all. And it was quite a sight. My right leg was in a brace because they'd attempted to put the knee back together. There's still 6 pins in a plate holding my right knee together. My left leg had been amputated above the knee. My right arm was all in a sling because they'd had to repair the entire rotator cuff and all that muscle structure. I could use my left hand and was dealing with a colostomy bag from all the ruptured intestines. I mean, it was just, I was still a mess and I was still quite sick, but I was going to make it. I was in the rehabilitation wing and ready to go home, but I went to bed one night and I'd actually gotten to the point where I could lay on my side. I had laid on my back so long, I'd rubbed all the hair off the back of my head. I could roll on my side and I fell into a deep sleep. And yet I was aware I was sleeping. It was strange. I thought, wow, I haven't slept this soundly. I mean, I was unconscious and I slept, but not like this. I was aware I was in a deep sleep. And I felt that light come, the same light as when I was at the accident scene. This light came and embraced me, wrapped around me like a blanket, comforting me in my grief. It felt as if I was rising above the hospital bed. But this time the light went away. It dispensed, and I was in the most beautiful place. There may not be words. I mean, people say the spirit world, the other side, heaven, if you will. The only word that comes close to what I was experiencing was I was home. I was home. It felt so welcoming, so familiar, I was home and I was whole. I had both legs and both arms and I began to run. And it was the incredible thing about it, it was so physical. It felt so physical. I mean, okay, perhaps my soul is out of my body, but I could feel the energy of the ground beneath my feet. I could feel the intelligence in my calves and thighs as I'm joyfully running, thinking, wow, I got both legs and both feet. I'm whole, I'm healed, I'm home. It was this blissful experience. And then I got the message, you're not here to stay. And at that same time, there was this corridor off to my left. And I knew intuitively I'm to go down that way. And I did. I began making my way down the corridor. And as I did, there was a crib at the end of the corridor. And Griffin, my youngest son, was only 14 months old. He was still sleeping in a crib at home at the time of the accident. So I raced to the crib. And I looked in the crib and there was my little boy. There he was, sleeping beautifully, peacefully. And it was so crazy because I'm looking at the details. It's just like when I glanced in the rearview mirror and there he is. And I'm noticing how long his eyelashes are and how what a miracle boy. And I reached in and swept him up and I picked him up and held him. And that felt so physical. Have you ever picked up a sleeping child?
Yes, of course.
Okay, well, there's a weight, there's a heat. I, I picked him up and I could feel him solid against me. I could feel his breath on my neck. And I reached over and I smelled his hair.
Mm.
I don't know if you've ever smelled the hair of a loved one, but it's like it's him. I mean, it's like this is my boy. And I began to weep and I'm holding my son and I'm thinking, wow, do I really get to be with him? And as I'm doing that, there's this intense presence behind me, this overwhelming cosmic, wise, powerful presence that's coming closer and closer. And I'm holding my son, and I begin to feel fearful. The guilt begins to bubble up. I'm holding my little boy, and I'm thinking, he's here because I crashed the car. His life was cut short because I overcorrected or dozed off, and this presence is coming closer, and I'm feeling it so powerfully. I'm thinking, that's God, and I'm in so much trouble. I crashed the car. My little boy's life was taken. And as the presence came so close, I'm holding my son, and I have this thought, I hope there's some way I can be forgiven. And in that thought, and this almost felt physical too, it's like these divine arms just wrapped around and held us both. And that's when the lid came off. There was just this download of peace and love and this question, I hope I can be forgiven. The first message that came through is there's nothing to forgive. Everything is in divine order. And I begin to see my life. I mean, they say your life flashes before your eyes, or the life review, as I've learned it's called. And I'm looking at my life, and I'm saying, well, that was a mistake. I didn't mean to do that. And as I'm in these beloved arms, I'm told, well, what did you learn? There was no judgment. It was just, well, what did you learn from that? What did you learn? What did you learn? As I'm looking at all these things, and I said, well, yeah, but that was wrong, and I knew it was wrong, and I did it anyway. And the beautiful creator, the being that held me, said, that's your judgment of it, not ours. We love you. You're as beloved as the little boy you hold. And here I am holding my son, who is beloved and divine and perfect to me. And yet it was such a personal experience to feel that was then magnified as I'm in the arms of the divine. And it was personal, but I knew that rippled out to every living soul. It's like we are so loved. And I was tutored on choice, I suppose. I was told I could be mad at God my whole life because this accident happened and it was allowed to happen. I was told I could make the choice to beat myself up for the rest of my life because I was driving the car. But I was given a new choice. And this threw me a little bit. Everything I was sitting there, I grew up believing that life was a test, and that certainly the angels were keeping score, and that God was going to be angry and I was failing. And I was having those thoughts, and I was told, your life is not a test, it's a gift. It's a gift. And then I'm given this third choice as I hold my son, and I'm told, I want you to have your will. Now, given my upbringing, I'm like, oh no, it's God's will be done. I know that. It's not my will, it's your will. And I had that question, and the creator, God, if you will, as I was held, said, my will is your will. That's how much you're loved. My will has always been that you have free will, that you get to choose. And in this beautiful, perfect moment, you can choose to give your son to me, to let him go, to hand him over in trust. And then he won't feel like he was torn from you, or this was some cosmic mistake. And in all that beauty and all that love, I kissed my little boy and I handed him over. And then I was back in the hospital bed, back to the amputation and the brace and all that went on. But perhaps with a little different perspective. I mean, I still grieved miserably, as anyone would. But this was so real, and it felt so poignant, and it's probably what got me through. I mean, otherwise I might be strung out on some street corner. It was a profound experience, and it was very personal. I didn't talk about it for years. I mean, I shared it with just family members. Oddly enough, there was a doctor in the hospital and a nurse. They came to see me when I was out of ICU, and they shared this story, and it's been talked about. In fact, Dr. Jeff O'Driscoll wrote a book about his experiences in the ER. But they shared as I was, and they didn't know me from Adam. This was a big risk on their part to come and talk to a total stranger. They didn't know that I had any of these experiences, but they came in and I didn't know who they were. I mean, this was at a time that was only family members and close, my work partners and stuff like that coming in. But they came in and they shared that while they worked on me in the arena, the surgical center there, as they were working on me, that they both saw and experienced Tamara, my wife's soul, in the operating room. The doctor recounts that he came in and he saw her standing in the air above me in the gurney, that she was floating, if you will, and standing above me, and she communicated to him. And I was sobbing as they're telling me this, and I said, "What did she say?" And he said, "She simply shared her gratitude for what we were doing to save your life." And I burst into bigger tears and said, "That's exactly what she would do." And he had no idea I had made this deal, that I would come back and that I had this thing I agreed to do. But they were the only people that knew. I told the doctor and the nurse, and I told my closest, I think I told my mother and my little brother, and I don't even know if I'd spoken to my father about it. I held this very tight for many years. Number one, I wasn't sure how to share it. I probably had to process it. Number two, I didn't want people to think I was crazy. It was somewhat liberating to share it with a doctor. I thought, well, if I'm nuts, he'll put me in the psych ward and get me the support that I need. But I knew, I mean, it was so real. I knew it. I knew I had experienced it. And he didn't do that. He listened. And yeah, it wasn't until many years after that I ever came to a place where I felt I could share it, or let alone write a book about it. And that was a strange experience too. I mean, there was a neighbor and she said, "Something happened to you." And I said, "Yeah, but I don't talk about it." And she said, "I'm going to come over. You're going to tell me about it." And I said, "No." And I trusted her. She came over. I told her what had happened. She said, "You got to talk to this guy at the university. He studies this stuff." And I'm like, "No," but she talked me into it. And I mentioned it to him and cried. I couldn't even speak of it without sobbing. I should point out, it's been 26 years since the accident happened. I can talk about it now without falling apart, but I went and shared with him what had happened. And he was a researcher. He was just studying what are the difference in people's experiences. What is a Buddhist experience as opposed to a Christian or an agnostic, or what is an atheist? I mean, he was studying these things. But he said, "You've got to come speak to our group. But there's a group that gathers, and I want you to come speak to them." And I said, "No, I can barely get through the story." But he said, "Look, people are in late stage cancer. People have had loved ones pass. I think this could be useful to them." And so I went and shared with this group, and I bawled through the whole thing. And then this guy in the back came up after and he said, "You're going to write a book." And I said, "No, I'm not." And he said, "I own a publishing company." And he got my information from the organization. Anyway, that was a Friday night. By Monday, there was a book contract in my email box.
Of course there was.
Well, I was still reluctant. I actually went back to the scene of the accident, which I had avoided. And I asked, I said, "Okay, this happened. There's a book contract. I don't want to write a book. I don't want to do this." There was a huge barrier. This was the barrier, Lori. If I'm completely honest, I thought, wow, there's a book contract. Am I that guy? Can I collect a check on a book royalty based on a catastrophe that took half the family and I was driving the car? And that was kind of that was the space I was in as I'm putting out a prayer or a question. And yet I don't profess to talk to God every day, but the answer came very clearly on that day. And I can quote what I was told. I was told, "Share your experience and others will heal."
Hmm.
This was 10 years after the accident. This was 10 years after the fact. But I thought, well, if it's about others and I've done some healing, then maybe that's one of the reasons I'm still here. So anyway, wrote the book, figured what the heck, it doesn't matter. My mom will buy a copy. But I kind of wrote it like that. I figured, well, because I'm not a writer, I deal in pictures and visuals. I'm a two-finger hunt and peck guy. And anyway, the book hit, I think, number 3 in the category on Amazon. And all of a sudden, just my whole life changed. And that driven red personality, go fight, win, beat the other guy, transformed through all these experiences into probably, why don't we lock arms and walk together? I don't have to beat you. I became far more compassionate, perhaps far more empathetic. I've been accused of being too emotional, too sensitive, too kind, too generous. But you know what? I mean, if I leave this world and it says on my headstone, he was kind, that's a win. If I want to win, that'll be my win. Anyway, that's the long and short of it. There's so many things, but that's the near-death experience and who I was before and perhaps how it changed me.
Wow. Well, first of all, I know it's been 26 years, but it's still a loss. And I'm deeply sorry for your loss. I'm also so grateful that you decided to share this message because I know you're part of helping parents heal. I
Yes.
know it's a big organization that you spend a lot of time and donate to. And I know how many people these messages touch, but not just the story of the loss, but your life is filled with miracles. And you could have rolled over into a ball and never looked at the light of day again. And some people choose to do that, and others choose to take it. And I'm sure there were days that you wanted to do
There were
that.
days I did that. Yeah, there were days I did that, just to be clear. Yes.
I'm sure, because it's still grief, no matter, even though you've experienced Tamara on the other side, even though you've experienced Griffin on the other side, even though you get to talk to God, we're still human living here in this incarnation, and we still have those emotions and those feelings, and they don't just go away or change or transform overnight. But your ability to tell this story, and I can feel your kindness, and we got to spend a little bit of time before this interview, and I know who you are.
Mm.
So I am so grateful that you shared this story, and I have a lot of questions I'd really love to ask you about the experience.
Ask away. The dialogue is far more interesting than the monologue. I tend to ramble on sometimes, but I'd love to, yeah, ask me anything.
It was perfect the way that you told it. I want to go back to something that I think might help people in a certain way. And I'm going to go back to at the very beginning of this story. You're ready to leave. Grandma and Grandpa are standing there waving, and Tamara gets out of the car and goes back and gives them one more hug and one more kiss. I don't think that was an accident. She heard a whisper and she listened to it. And you mentioned about listening to the whispers. How, now that you have all this experience and you've had all of this time to process things, how have you learned to discern and listen to your own whispers that you can share with the audience on how to connect and do that themselves?
Oh, wow, Lori, I'm still learning that. But there is something I do, and this is profound. This works for everybody. People have said, well, gosh, I want to have an experience like that. I want to have a connection to the divine or whatever. Go into a quiet place. It doesn't take long. Just be still and ask. Ask. I mean, you can whisper it out loud. You could just say it within your own heart, but simply ask, what can I do for someone else today? And I promise the ideas will just flow. You'll get an image. You'll see someone's face. You'll remember, oh, yeah. Or it might be as simple as, gosh, call mom. You haven't talked to mom in a week. I mean, but when we ask, the universe will answer. And when it's not about me, this is where I made the big shift. I used to pray and, oh, bless me and help me and this and that. And I'm not criticizing that at all. But it seemed that when I made it outward focused, when it was not about me, when it's like, what can I do for someone else? That's when the inspiration flowed. That's when the inspiration came. And that's one of the things I do to get connected or stay connected. I like to say ABC, always be connected. Even if it's 10 minutes a day, just sit and be and connect. And I love nature. I will go out on the rocks or in the trees or somewhere where I can connect perhaps to the earth and just ask the questions and see what flows. Oftentimes I've said, well, gosh, is that just my imagination? And then I decided, so what? Did it inspire you? Did it cause you to take action? Did you go do something? And what was the result of that? And I don't care if it's smiling to that stranger on the street as they pass, you might have saved their life. You don't know what they're going through. You don't know. So the whisper is a big deal.
I think it's a very big deal. Thank you so much for sharing that. What a great place for someone to start who just doesn't know what to do or where to go. This kind of piggybacks onto, because you said we smile at somebody and we don't know what it does to them. And you had a life review. Now, when I first started interviewing people who had near death experiences on my channel, I was obsessed with people at life reviews because I know that there's something in that experience when it's shared that makes people stop and think differently. And so for you, you experience this, whatever you do to somebody else, you said you were literally doing to yourself. And in knowing that, coming back with that knowledge, how did you then conduct yourself, live your life differently with that little piece of information?
Oh, I lived my life. I mean, let's be honest. I probably mess up every other day. You know,
Me too.
there's things I wish I could have handled that differently, or I wish I'd have said that differently or more kindly. But but I think being aware of that and realizing that love is the most powerful force in the universe. I often will ask, well, what would love do in this?
Mm.
What would love do? And whether that's raising a child or working with the boss or whatever that might look like, the intention is to be our most magnificent self. And I think one of the interesting things about that too is self-love. I mean, it's really easy for me to love the neighbor or to forgive the neighbor, but boy, when it comes to forgiving myself or loving myself and showing myself some grace, that's where my challenge is. That's where my true growth seems to be focused at this point.
It's the airplane mask. You have to put your own mask on
Yeah,
before you can help somebody else with theirs.
right. Well, and even, I mean, my upbringing, the biblical love your neighbor as yourself. Well, gosh, I can love my neighbor, but not if I don't love myself. I can only give what I have. If I don't have love within my own heart for myself, how can I possibly have anything to give to another? And no wonder we're at war. If we don't love ourselves, if we don't have self-love, I think that's key. I think that's really key to this notion of, okay, what good am I doing in the world today? Well, can I look in the mirror and love that person and then spread that out? That would be the challenge. That would be the big deal.
It's a big deal.
Yeah.
So you have this incredible love with Tamara. She's gone and you're on the other side with her. What I love about you telling this story is I think that when people hear of somebody dying, they're so concerned. That's the state that they're in, the suffering of that. And I've done enough reading, watching, listening, and interviewing people with near death experiences to know that we often leave our body before we have any of that trauma. But for you to see her in this state of completeness, where she is just gorgeous, I think that you give a lot of people hope to know that our soul truly cannot be harmed. So I'm so glad that you shared that. So glad you had that experience to even know that for yourself. That must have brought you so much comfort as you were going through your healing process after that accident.
Yeah, it did. And I think even, okay, if I left my body, which I believe I left my body, you could argue that I had a traumatic death, the accident, the injuries, all of it. When loved ones pass, that was the most natural, liberating, freeing thing of all, was to leave the body, and yet to encounter Tamara in her magnificence, to even go into that realm with my injuries and be whole. Yeah, that's a question no one's ever asked. You did it, Lori. No one's ever talked about that. So that's a good one. Yeah, that's a good one. The wholeness, that the soul cannot be damaged, no matter what happens, no matter what you do or what is done to you. It will never change the fact that we are divine, magnificent beings of light who are eternal. There is no death. I mean, there's a passing, but for me, it was like walking from one room to the next. Suddenly this release, and it was beauty.
It sounds like it was beautiful. And then she tells you you can't come back, and she's emotional, which is a little bit surprising because on the other side, we're in this state of love and bliss, that feeling that we have, and yet she's emotional and she's imploring you to go back. And you know inherently that there's an agreement. So I want to talk about soul contracts and agreements and what you feel like you've learned from that since then. So I feel that we have contracts with every single soul that we've ever met. The person at the store, the person that you work with, the person that you marry and love. Because every single person that you have an interaction with, you have a ripple effect on, good, bad, indifferent, intentional, unintentional.
Yeah.
So you have this agreement and you know that you have to go back. So my question to you is, what have you learned about soul agreements and your feelings about that? And the second part of that question is, do you think that you both planned that before you came into this earthly incarnation?
These are great questions. I do embrace soul contracts. And here's the dichotomy. There's a contract, but there's free will and choice.
Of course.
I mean, it feels like to me there's one cosmic law, and that is free will. You get to
Yes.
choose, but there's contracts, and I know those contracts can be fulfilled and be finished. And some of them might be that person at the register at the store, and some of them might be a lifelong relationship. I do believe we planned it. In fact, here's the crazy thing. When I'm in the arms of God in my near-death experience, and my big question was, why? Why? I mean, why? And what was communicated is, because we love you, and this is what your soul wanted. You created this. And all the players, Tamara loved you enough to leave. Griffin agreed to break your heart in unimaginable ways, that you might have an open heart, that you might love differently because you lost. Even Spencer said, yeah, Dad, I'll stick around and walk with you. Even if you limp, I'll get through this. I mean, yeah, these soul contracts, these things that take place, these people in our lives, and we create it. That was my takeaway, is God didn't do this to me. I created an iteration that would expand my soul, and the entire universe loved me enough to support it. I mean, yeah, the emotion.
I was going to say, why do you? I want to know why you feel emotional saying that.
Because it's all love. Even the most challenging, gut-wrenching, heartbreaking things expand the soul and create compassion, create empathy, create connection. Even if it drives you within to really seek answers. Joy is a beautiful thing. Yes, I choose to be blissful in my life, but I wouldn't know bliss unless I had experienced the absolute depths of sorrow. And I wouldn't know health unless I experienced the absolute depths of pain and sickness. And I wouldn't know love unless I'd experienced things that are not love. It's a gift. Once again, I mean, it's echoing. It's like, yep, it's all a gift if we can embrace it in that way, which is a challenge. When you're in it,
I was just gonna say it's such a tall order for people, but you are speaking my language on every level, Jeff, because I agree with every single thing you said. One of the things I think that's so interesting is when I talk to people that aren't on this necessarily spiritual path, is they think so often that the things happen to them and against them, like they're the victim of it, or all these experiences are happening. But I know I mean, it's an intricate plan with our soul, because I think that we are here for kind of three things. Number one, for soul learning and growth. Number two, for experiences that we can't have on the other side. But
right,
number three, I'm going to call this a refinement. I think that by having these things that we would label as negative, we are somehow refining our soul in a way. And I really believe that we choose these experiences, and then we contract with these people that say, yes, I love you so much that I will come in and I will do this to you so you can experience this. I will play this. So I don't necessarily, it's hard for me to judge. It's hard for me to judge, because what is evil versus what is another soul loving you so much that it came in to let you have a certain experience. What are your thoughts on that?
it aligns with how I feel because it's all love, even when it feels like it's not love. No, that you got to chew on that one for a little bit, but if everything is in divine order, and that was the feeling and the essence I got, it's all in divine order, then maybe those people that challenge me the most are my greatest teachers.
Mm,
Maybe that gives me the biggest opportunity to really dig deep in love.
that's
And
so powerful.
yeah, I mean, and in the end, love will win. Love does win. Love is all there is. I mean, I believe someday maybe we'll gather in some big, beautiful meadow on the other side, and we'll probably laugh and say that was a trip. I mean, wow. And we'll cry, and we'll probably hold each other in absolute gratitude and say, wow, now my soul knows. And thank you for the part you played. Thank you for your contribution in the expansion of my soul. And we'll dance around like children and celebrate the life, and then probably say, what do you want to do next?
Exactly. What are we planning
What do
next?
you want to do next? Yeah.
Wow, I love that. So do you think that we have one exit point, many exit points? It sounded like you weren't meant to leave at the time that you left.
Well, here's the deal. I'm sure there's a blueprint, but there's free will and choice. I mean, it didn't feel like a choice, but I made a choice to come back. It could have very well been an exit point. Had I said, nope, Tam, I'm not going anywhere. I'm here, I'm with you, and that little boy will be an orphan, and I'm sure he'll be fine, but I'm not going back. That could have been a choice. I think it's so interesting, even in the arms of the divine, I was told, you get to choose. It's your will. Well, and I've thought about that. Maybe I should just held on to that little boy and not put him back, not giving him back, just held my son and stayed right there.
So he was young and he was an infant, and you picked him up as an infant. But I know we're not really that.
No, and it's I have contemplated that. Now I will share this. Griffin has come to me
I was going to ask. I knew it.
in dreams, visions. I'll call them visions. I wasn't necessarily even asleep. And he was not a toddler.
I knew it.
No, I think the universe was so kind. I feel there was so much love. God knew I needed to hold my little boy. But when he has shown up in dreams, he's not a little boy. He's a magnificent, full-grown man. And I'll
But
I'll
you
share.
recognize him, but you
Oh,
recognize
I've
him, you knew
recognized him.
instantly.
Recognized him instantly. I'll share two things that happened. One, this is crazy. I mean, I was invited by the local high school to give a speech for the commencement. And this was years after the accident. I had become an author, but they didn't know that's the school Tamara taught at least the people that asked me. It was a whole new administration, everybody. They said,
Whoa.
we understand you can motivate people. Come give these kids a motivational speech on how to take on life. But when I got there, it was the local high school, and I sat down for a moment on a bench that's there. And I was completely overwhelmed and almost ashamed to realize I hadn't counted the dates. But I realized this would have been Griffin's graduating class. He would have been 18. So this was what, 17 years after the accident, 16 years after the accident. And as that inspiration came, I felt him come and sit right by me. Put his arm around me. He's like, yep, Dad, they would have been my girlfriends and my teammates. And it's no accident that you're here to address them, and I'm with you. That was a pretty amazing night. I barely held it together as they walked out. And I'm looking at what would have been his girlfriends or his buddies. I still get emotional. On another occasion, and this was strange. This was like a vision. I was in that weird lucid state. And suddenly I'm sitting in the front seat of my dad's pickup truck. We grew up on a little family farm, and I remember this truck. I remember the smell of it. I remember these bad seat covers. And I looked down at myself, and I was in a red jumpsuit, corduroy that snapped on the inner thighs. I was a toddler. I looked at my little shoes and I thought, oh my gosh, I remember this jumpsuit. I hated this jumpsuit. And yet there I was, consciously, as a toddler, sitting in the front seat of my dad's pickup truck. And we had cows, and the cows were pulling at the feed that was in the back of the truck, and the truck was swaying, and I was experiencing being frightened. And then my dad came and shooed the cows off and jumped in the truck and began to comfort me. And I thought, I remember this like it was yesterday. I couldn't have been any older then. And then it hit, 14 months old. That's the age Griffin was when he passed. And when I had that thought, the truck, the jumpsuit, everything went away, and I was my current age, standing in the beautiful pasture of the old farm. And I looked over, and here was this magnificent young man. And I knew in an instant, that's Griffin. I could see, I knew that's him, but I couldn't get to him. I wanted to race to him, and I couldn't get to him. And he looked at me, and the non-verbal telepathic communication began. And he said, Dad, I wanted you to remember that, because I'll never forget being your little boy. And I'll never forget having you as my dad. It was brief, but it mattered. And wow, I raced to him, and I could get to him, and I held him, and he was taller and bigger than me. He was this muscular kid and tall, and he held me. And then he did whisper, he spoke to me. And he said, Dad, I have a message. And I'm thinking, a message from my boy from the other side. And he leaned in my ear, and he simply said, I love you. And I'm proud of you. And that was it. But what grander message might there be? This was just shortly before the book was released. And I
Wow.
thought, wow, okay, okay. Laura, you've done it to me. I'm dripping all
I'm
over.
s I'm so sorry, but I'm also so not sorry because I love my whole life is about signs and synchronicities. I get so many of them. I want to tell you, your signs confirm my signs. Your experiences confirm my experiences. And our experiences confirm everybody that's watching. Because when you get into this place where your life is filled with miracles and signs and synchronicities, you're going, what just happened? And you want to reach out and you want to tell somebody because it makes it more real. But most people can't even understand because they're not living in a place with that. So whoever's drawn to this will find this and it will help them confirm their own signs and synchronicities. I feel so blessed that you shared all of this.
Oh, thank you. And it's interesting. I mean, for those that are grieving, the loved ones have passed. It feels like they're gone. They're never gone, and they're not dead. I mean, this whole dream, vision, experience, they're aware of us. They're cheering us on. They're watching what we do without judgment, just with love. And yeah, I think they honor the journey and they realize, wow, look what they're doing. Look what they're doing in this crazy experience we call life.
Yeah. Can
Yeah,
I ask you one more question?
absolutely, yes.
Okay. My last question I want to ask you is, as you've had this whole experience, what is the biggest thing that you've learned that you want everybody to know? Like the one message, the one most important message, what would you say?
Wow, it's a choice. Choose joy, choose beauty. Even if you're in the challenges, choose to see what you're learning rather than what's happening. How's my soul expanding? Let go of the whys and just focus on the what's. What am I learning? What is expanding within me? And what can I do for someone else that might ease my own pain?
Beautiful. Well, I'm sure the people are watching will want to connect with you. So where can they find you? What is your book called? Where can they connect?
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I'm kind of recluse. I'm not really on social media much. But you can find me at my website. It's Envoy Publishing, ENVOY publishing.com. The books are there. The books are on Amazon. My personal memoir is called Knowing. And we just released here about a year and a half ago a children's book. Spencer, my oldest son, and I collaborated on a children's book. He didn't have a near death experience. He didn't have these things that happened to me. And he was 7. And the book's titled, Where Are You? But we thought we were writing a children's book. I mean, some guys fish and some guys, and we wrote a book, we wrote a book together, but we thought we were writing a children's book, but it's been embraced by anybody who misses someone. And it's one of those children's books with perhaps a grander message of where are you, those that have passed on. And it's a surprise. It's a surprise what Spencer discovered. He didn't have the experiences I had. He discovered that, wow, my mom and my brother live on in me. They live on in me. It's not a religious thing about, oh, they're in this. He's like, they live on in me. And once I realized that, then they're alive in everything. And the way I live my life can honor their memory. So,
What a legacy. Like, what an amazing gift to be able to create something like that with your son. And what a beautiful gift that you have given the world by sharing this. I mean, Jeff, I can't imagine how difficult it is to tell this story again and again. I know you're very emotional, as you should be. It's an emotional story, but even all these years later, to want to be telling it, to wanting to help and affect the collective consciousness to wake them up to the power of who they are and to understand that we are love and that what we do to others really matters. These were just such beautiful messages. Like, this interview feeds my soul. I just can't thank you enough.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's been an honor to spend time with you. And any way I can support you, let me know, because I would
Oh,
be. So
thank you. And thank you so much, everybody, for watching. Next up, check out this playlist of other NDE interviews. Please like and subscribe. It really helps this channel to grow so I can bring you more content. Thank you for watching. I'm so glad you're here.